This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by Goldie Wilson for Mayor of Hill Valley. Progress is his middle name.
And the letter I. You can't spell inconceivable without I. Because you keep using that word, and I do not think it means what you think it means.
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go. SPM. Safety contact.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith.
Welcome to episode 2 of Dorking Out, the podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories in pop culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and pretty much anything else that we want to talk about. With me today is my co-host, professional writer and author of The Sonia Show, Sonia Mansfield. Hi, Sonia.
Hey there.
Hey.
With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith.
And today's show, we are not using complete sentences. No. And on today's show, we are talking about the greatest living director of our time, Steven Spielberg, in honor of his new movie, The Big Friendly Giant. We have a mini review of that.
Oh, that's what that stands for.
That's right. Not the other thing that people seem to think about when they see BFG. Then we're going to let you know a little bit. We're going to let you get to know us a little bit better with a new segment called Youre Dead to Me, where we talk about pieces of pop culture that we straight up hate. This week's entry is Sonia's burning disdain for Meet the Parents.
Ugh.
And finally, we're going to do a special 4th of July version of Why Should I Listen to You?, where we talk about some of our favorite movies about America. And when we talk about those movies, you'll know whether or not you should listen to us when it comes to movie reviews and TV reviews that we give you. The movies that we think embody America will shock you. But first, we're going to pick our favorite headlines of the week.
This is Tomorrowland, a land inspired by science fact and fantasy.
So both of our headlines are Star Wars related, and I think everyone's just going to have to get used to it. This is how it's going to be for the next 20 years.
That's right.
Our headline picks will probably always be Star Wars related.
That's right. You have not seen, I tell this to my boys now, especially after Disney bought Star Wars, you will not live to see the final Star Wars movie. So just settle in.
That's morbid.
It is. This is your next century, people. They're still cranking out Sherlock Holmes movies. So this was my favorite headline of the week, Star Wars related, that was making the rounds, which is the rumor, well, I don't know if it's a rumor, that the Han Solo solo film is the best Star Wars script yet. And there's a quote going around from, let's read it here, concept artist, how do you pronounce that? Ian McCraig. That's close enough.
The Han Solo movie has by far the best Star Wars script and one of the best scripts, period, that I have ever read. And what I think is funny is that this headline's making the rounds, and I was like, what a scoop. Someone who's working on a movie thinks it's really good.
That's right. What a scoop. Some concept artist that I've never heard of, no offense, Ian, is saying that this script, that I haven't read, is the best he's ever read.
Spoiler alert. Person working on film thinks it's the best film ever.
That's right. Now, we have just talked a lot of BS about what nice Ian has simply said. Yeah. However, I have to say, I'm very excited about this. I'm very encouraged. If it sucked, unfortunately, after episode 1, the script started going around, you didn't have a lot of concept artists going out, run for the hills, people! This new Star Wars movie is it's gonna break your heart! We didn't have any of that. So at least if he's feeling good enough to go out and tout this, that's nice to hear.
I would like to think that what he's saying is true. I want it to be true because Han Solo is one of my all-time favorite movie characters, and the movie makes me nervous. So I'm glad that there's some good word of mouth already.
Why does it make you nervous?
Because I don't want them to screw it up. Because Han Solo is my favorite. That's why.
Speaking of Han Solo being your favorite and how you may or may not have felt about certain dramatic developments with Mr. Solo, my favorite headline of the week has to do with James Cameron's comments recently about his reaction to Star Wars The Force Awakens, where something happened to Han Solo. Sonia, I can't remember what it was. What happened to Han in The Force Awakens? He had a lightsaber right to the aorta.
So sad.
So, anyway.
I'm still not ready to talk about it.
That's right. I'm ready. He's dead.
It's so sad.
All right. So, Cameron was giving a interview recently, famous for Avatar and Titanic and Terminator. Look at this guy's resume. Hold on. I want to step back for a second. Look at James Cameron's resume. People like to beat up on him for Avatar and Titanic. I don't know why. Both of those movies at one point were the biggest movies of all time.
Just because they made a lot of money doesn't mean they're really good.
No, the fact that they're really good means that they're really good.
I would agree with half of that statement.
You cannot get to that level of money without a lot of people really liking the movie. You just can't.
That doesn't mean it's really good.
All right. If you want to put on your film snob hat and walk around while I talk about James Cameron, feel free. But
I like some of the movies you just named.
Now here's the thing. And here's why I was going to point that out. The third thing on this guy's resume, the third or fourth thing down from the top, that's how much of a badass James Cameron is. He's
made some of my all-time favorite movies.
He has, yes. So anyway, what he said was he doesn't seem to be all that thrilled with Star Wars The Force Awakens, and I am going to pat myself on the back and say that some of his criticisms echoed some of the things that I said when I gave my review for Star Wars The Force Awakens, and here's what he said. Well, George Lucas is a friend of mine. I didn't say that. And George and I had a good conversation about it. I don't want to say too much about the film, as I have a lot of respect for J.J. Abrams. Backhanded, or here comes the backhanded something. I want to see where they're taking it, see what they're doing next with it. But I gotta say that I think George's 6 films had more innovative visual imagination. And this film was more of a retrenchment to things that you had seen before and characters you had seen before. It took a few baby steps forward with new characters, but for me, the jury is still out, and I want to see where they go with it. Now, I like The Force Awakens a lot more than it sounds like Cameron is, but this is one of the things that I am starting to crow from the rooftops when it comes to people who still like to seem to kick around George Lucas. And God knows I've done my share of kicking around George Lucas. But you watch, any one of the prequels had a lot more imagination of new worlds, new concepts, new settings, new aliens, new methods of storytelling for the Star Wars universe that he hadn't tried before. So Lucas, say what you want about the prequels, he was trying to do new things. He was trying to expand the universe and be more interesting. And Abrams was content to make a very enjoyable movie, which is great in and of itself, but he was pretty timid when it came to what he decided to do in the Star Wars universe.
I think he did the right thing. I think it was right to make the movie he made to get people back into the Star Wars universe, people who felt that they had been burned by the prequels.
I do agree with you. It's one of those things where I really admire Lucas's ambition, but his execution, I think, fell short. And I don't really admire Abrams' ambition, but his execution was so fantastic that his movie is kind of the better movie.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this before, that it kind of makes me weep to think what would have happened if Abrams had been directing the prequels. It would have had Lucas setting everything up, putting the story in place and getting the characters and the concepts and this and that, but it would have had Abrams' flair and Abrams' warmth and talent with actors. I
read this stuff about James Cameron too, and I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to hear criticisms from the guy that wrote the script for Avatar. I'm sorry that those characters mean nothing to me. I don't remember any of their names. And he came up with the idea of unobtainium.
Come on. No, now hold on right a minute. I agree with you that the script for Avatar had some things that were left to be desired, but the imagination that he executed in that movie, and the fact that he decided to still call it unobtainium. Come on, there is a level of humor and a level of self-awareness that is definitely going on there. That was not like, oh, I'm a horrible writer, so I can't think of anything better to do, so I'm just going to put this in. No, he knew exactly what he's doing. You don't live with a script for 3 years or 20 like he did with Avatar. Keep that in through the entire process to the finished film and not have that be a conscious choice. Come on, that was hilarious.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Me and all the other millions of moviegoers around the world who made Avatar the biggest movie of all time.
Sorry, I just don't think that movie's very good.
All right. I'm trying to decide between all the hipster jokes I can make right now.
Yes, I'm such a hipster. Everyone says that about me.
No, Sonia, you're not a hipster. I'm just teasing. And definitely what I don't want is for any of our listening audience to go onto our Facebook page, look at the icon of Sonia, and tell me whether or not that is based on some sort of hipster aesthetic.
But that's how I look.
Definitely don't do that. No, there's no hipsters going on here. I think I've been mean enough. So that brings us to topic 1. Steven Spielberg, great living director or the greatest living director? In honor of his new movie, The Big Friendly Giant. I believe that's his first Disney movie and his first PG-rated movie since Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think. We are going to talk a little bit about BFG and our favorite, most favorite, and least favorite Spielberg movies. Sonia, I think BFG is going to slot into this conversation pretty neatly here in a minute. What is your favorite Steven Spielberg movie?
Okay, so this will be a surprise to probably no one, but my favorite Spielberg movie is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not just my favorite Spielberg movie, it's one of my favorite top 5 movies of all time. I think it's an absolutely perfect adventure movie. It features classic action sequences, one right after the other. The running from the boulder, the pit of snakes, the truck chase where he goes underneath one of the trucks, the fight at the plane, the fight where the guy pulls out the sword and he just shoots him. You know, I could just go on and on. I just love this movie so much. I've watched it a million times. I think it's got Harrison Ford at the top of his game. And I just love that Indy's just a man.
Yes.
You know, he's not a superhero. You know, he's just a man who can bleed like a normal human being. And I love Marion. She's so smart and, you know, she's not a helpless victim. And I think she is in every way his equal. Yeah. And of course, it's got awesome villains to root against because who doesn't want to stick it to the Nazis, and has a great ending. Yeah,
I agree with pretty much everything that you just said. I just the way you were ticking off all the different action sequences and everything. I might go home and watch that again tonight. You know, it's funny. You and I talk so much about Star Wars and how much we love Star Wars, George Lucas, and bow to the altar of Star Wars. Actually, it's Raiders of the Lost Ark that made me want to go make movies. It made me want to pick up a camera and, you know, when I realized, oh, you can, you know, there are people out in the world whose job it is to make a piece of work like this, that just inspired me to no end. And then after Return of the Jedi came out, I kind of got back into Star Wars and all that. But it was Raiders of the Lost Ark that set me on the path to TV and filmmaking. So I love that movie like crazy. And it's funny because there's a lot of people that talk about, oh, Die Hard, he's just, John McClane. It was one of the first movies where it showed like a regular guy could, be an action hero. And it's no. Indiana Jones. It's still Indiana Jones.
That scene where he's in the submarine and he like takes his shirt off and he's just so beat up. Yeah. Like, he's really been put through the ringer. And of course she's like trying to help him. And yeah, it's such a sweet scene. But it's just like a little moment that shows that he's just a man. Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. It's funny. I have probably 4 movies that at various points have been my favorite Steven Spielberg movies. But I have to, the one that kind of consistently always hits the top of the scale for me, other than Raiders, is E.T., the Extraterrestrial. Yeah. This is a perfect movie. It is. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, that's okay. Keep going. I was just going to say, like, that's the movie that I think is most representative of what Spielberg is like. Yeah, it's got a perfect tone. The thing that I really like about it, and that I think a lot of people who are Spielberg imitators don't really get, is if you look at Elliot, it's the story of Elliot finding an alien in his suburban town, bringing it home and befriending it. Elliot isn't really liked by the kids at school. He's still going through the trauma of his parents getting divorced. He's a messed up little kid, and it's a great, it treats Elliot like a person and not like a precocious little kid. Hollywood has this awful, and this is a secret to nobody, has this awful tendency to make kids kind of wise beyond their years or precocious or whatever. Yeah, like they're little adults. Exactly. And Spielberg is smart enough not to do that. And just what would a kid really do if this really happened? And some of the things he does are very smart. Some of them are very naive. And it's just a sweet, fantastic movie about friendship. And, it's just magic. There are moments in that movie that are as transcendent and sweet and amazing for people that love film as any other moments in any other film of all of movies ever. It is just a perfect, wonderfully magic movie. I remember crying so hard when I saw it. It's one of the first movies that really just hit me in that soft spot when I saw it in the theater. Oh yeah, definitely. I think it might have been the first movie that I cried in, and there's that moment where E.T. apparently dies, but he's kind of coming back to life. And the government has descended on Elliot's house, and they think E.T.'s dead. But Elliot finds out that E.T.'s actually coming back to life. And there's that pot of flowers that E.T. was carrying around. And as they're pulling Elliot out, and he's pretending to cry because the government thinks E.T.'s dead, but Elliot knows he's coming back to life. As he's being pulled past the flowers, and the flowers are starting to come back to life, and he does this half cry, half laugh thing. Oh man, that moment makes me bawl every single time. It's just so hopeful and sweet, and such a fantastic turnaround from just, the heartbreak of E.T. dying to he's alive and magic is returning to the world and this dead flower's coming back to life. It's just, it's religious for me. It's so interesting that this man who directed E.T. is the same man who did Jaws. Yes. Who would later do Schindler's List. Like, what an eclectic filmography this man has. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's, I kind of jokingly said the great or greatest, but for me, I know Scorsese's still working. I know that there are great directors out there, but if you look at Spielberg's body of work from beginning to end, the different genres he's gone into, I mean, he's made, for my money, he's made the best action movie of all time in Raiders.
probably the best war movie of all time in Saving Private Ryan. He's made the best kids movie in E.T. of all time. I mean, he's made one of the best horror movies in Jaws. I mean, I think he's so great. He's one of those filmmakers. He's kind of like John Williams in a way, that he is so great. We've gotten used to how great he is. So when he passes away or, leaves, people are going to step back and look at what he's done, and they're going to be, people think they're going to be sad. People were sad when Prince died, which, was one thing.
I was.
Exactly. But when Spielberg goes, there's that natural moment to step back and assess somebody's body of work. It's going to be, they're going to shut down movies for a week when he's gone. It's going to be.
Right.
Anyway, so, and yeah.
So one of the things I forgot to mention about Raiders also, the theme music.
Yes.
And the music in general is so mwah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is I was going to say, there's something very similar with John Williams, who did the Raiders of the Lost Ark March, and that guy is so ridiculously talented that I don't think people understand. I mean, when you start, he did Star Wars, Jaws, Raiders, the original Superman theme. He did, I believe, the Lost in Space theme from the TV show. That was one of his first gigs.
Crazy.
He did,
so much.
He's done so much. He did the Harry Potter theme. He did, he's just, I mean, that movie, everything came together. He did the E.T. theme, which is just another brilliant piece of work. My other two favorites are Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is just a fantastic movie about the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of why people do things, and, trying to find out what's going on in the world. He's got such a fantastic way of showing regular Americana. He doesn't do this kind of idealized cartoon version of America that you see in a lot of movies these days. It's like, when you saw the family in Close Encounters trying to deal with what the craziness of UFOs coming to Earth and trying to figure things out, and them hanging around with their neighbors, I knew people like that growing up, and then Schindler's List is just, if you want to show,
what do you even say?
Yeah. It communicates the horrors of the Holocaust in a very human, I think that's the thing that's amazing about Schindler's List is a lot of documentaries or movies about Holocaust, they get to this point of dread or horror that it's difficult to keep feeling it. They almost beat you into a kind of numbness.
Yeah.
But Spielberg never does that. He keeps you interested, and he uses his other tricks to really bring these characters to life and really keep them alive, even as evil as some of them are. So when we start to see the horrors of what actually went on with the Holocaust, and when we go to Auschwitz, it's just horrifying. It's just awful beyond measure. Yeah. And, it takes someone, Spielberg gets a lot of guff for being corny or melodramatic, but I think he has a courage to really let the audience feel full emotions. He's not one of these filmmakers that's, I'm too cool for school for that. I'm just going to be very minimalistic and whatever. He brings you right into the emotion in a way that I think is a lot more courageous than ostensibly more sophisticated filmmakers.
Yeah. So I used to work at movie theaters. Our listeners probably don't know that. You do. I was also, a certified projectionist. So every year at the movie theater I worked at, we would show Schindler's List to classrooms. So once a year we would get the print of Schindler's List, and every year I'd put it together, and then I would have to screen it to make sure that it was okay. So I watched Schindler's List once a year for a couple years, on top of the fact that I had already seen it in the theater like a normal person. And every single time I saw it, I was completely in awe and just blown away by how well done it was.
Yeah.
And every time it just wrecked me.
Yeah. Yeah.
every time.
You know, it's funny. That is one of my favorite Spielberg movies, but it's also one of those movies, you know, there's a certain
you don't
class
want to
of
watch
movies.
it over and over.
Well, that's the thing, is there's a certain class of movies that you watch it, you want to see it, you loved it, you were amazed by it, but maybe you don't need to see it twice.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you know, very
Yeah.
difficult. And yeah, Schindler's List is all of that.
Yeah, his most important movie, probably.
Yes.
You know.
Which brings us to my least favorite Spielberg movie, which breaks my heart to say it, because I just saw it last night, and it's called The Big Friendly Giant. Oh my God, this movie! Everything.
So why do you hate it so much?
I don't. Here's the thing: is I don't hate it. I don't hate it, but it's just so boring.
Oh,
It's the story.
that's a sin.
And what's funny is, it was written, if I am correct in my remembering of the screenwriter, by the same person that wrote E.T. And it's got a lot of
Melissa Matson.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that was her. And so, like, on paper, I want to love it. And it's the story of this girl who lives in an orphanage, who one night she sees a giant who's walking around London, and the giant reaches in, grabs her, and takes her back to Giant Land. And they become friends and whatever. But it's just, I don't know. It's almost like somebody trying to do a parody of a Steven Spielberg movie.
Oh,
I don't know if it was the script. It's, you know, from a book, Roald Dahl's script, the BFG, Big Friendly Giant. And the giant is so just cloying, I guess. Like, he talks in these silly Britishisms or whatever. Or I don't even want to call him Britishism. It's just, he, you know, supposedly the explanation is he didn't have any schooling, so he just talks funny. And he stumbles over his words and kind of makes up words and everything. But it's like so aggressively trying to be cute and trying to be sweet. And you can see the movie is so intent on trying to build a sense of wonder. And there are moments in that just do look amazing and do look beautiful and do have this moment of kind of cinematic wonder. But they are just, it's almost like there's 45 minutes of story in this 2.5 to, or sorry, not 2.5. Probably, it felt like, I think it was like a 2-hour movie, but it felt longer. And it could have been like a 45-minute episode of Amazing Stories or something. And it would have been great. But it just wasn't, that's the thing. It's, you know, like halfway through the movie, I brought my sons, who we all like to go to the movies, and they're still young enough. You know, I've shown them a lot of different movies, so they're you know, they'll go see Finding Dory. You know, they're teenage boys, but they'll still go see all different kinds of movies and can find something to enjoy them. They really like
because
Finding
you're
Dory.
raising them right.
That's right. But this, we were like we walked out and they were like, "Dad, what did you think of that?" I don't know. That was boring. And then they would look at me and it's like, "Oh, I don't know." You know, it was. I love Steven Spielberg. I will praise him to the high heavens. I don't hate this movie because this movie wants to be sweet and nice and good. And it's not, I don't know. It doesn't have anything that's hateful about it. There's nothing cynical about it. It's just one of those things where sometimes you take all the ingredients, you put them together, you take a bite, and it just doesn't taste good.
Right.
And that's what's going on here. So, Big Friendly Giant, I would give a 4 out of 10. So, yes, that is my least favorite Spielberg movie.
You like this movie less than my pick for least favorite Spielberg movie, The Lost World.
Oh, definitely. Oh, it's not even
That
close.
is interesting.
There's The Lost World has all kinds of problems. But
Understatement.
but it is not nearly as boring. Well, that's the thing. Is Jurassic Park: The Lost World is much more cynical, much more commercial, much more crass, much more whatever. But as a movie-going experience, yeah, it was. I would much rather see The Lost World. Like, if I have to think about sitting through any of Spielberg's movies again, just right here, right now, Big Friendly Giant would be last on the list.
That is so interesting.
So why do you So The Lost World. Why The Lost World? Why not Always or Hook?
By the way, Hook could have very easily been this pick, but I decided to go with The Lost World because I think it's the one that disappointed me more. I thought Jurassic Park was really great. I thought it was super fun, and I remember us seeing it. We saw it together, you and I.
Yep.
And we were like, holy crap, those look like real dinosaurs. Like, what a special movie. Like, it was really cool, and it was just, and it was fun. And Lost World was so disappointing. I mean, it's so disappointing. I haven't even watched it again since I saw it in the theater, probably with you. So I'm going off my memory here. But I remember thinking that the dinosaurs were more realistic than the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the big thing that really made me hate it was Jeff Goldblum's daughter in it. Mm-hmm. They tell us she's a gymnast. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
And then at some point in the movie, she twirls from a bar and like kicks a dinosaur. And I was like, oh, screw this movie. Like, that's stupid. That's just stupid.
Yeah, no, it's not good. Yeah, all that stuff we talked. Actually, that's a great point. All the stuff we talked about Spielberg not believing in precocious kids and keeping them realistic and keeping them grounded and recognizable as children. All of that does not apply to The Lost World, especially to that character.
Yeah.
That character was... So
yeah. This was my pick because I remember really hating it and being so disappointed.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, that was nearly the entire movie takes place on just some other island. They just... Yeah, it was like their backup island or something, right? It's like the backup. So we're in the jungle with things, and then in the last 15 minutes of the movie, they bring a tyrannosaur and some velociraptors, a tyrannosaur and a baby tyrannosaur to the mainland in San Diego. So for 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes of the movie most people wanted to see, which is a dinosaur tearing around suburbia.
Yeah, it was just not very good.
Yeah. So, Steven Spielberg, if you're listening, we know that you are. We love you. You're still the greatest of all time.
On top of all this, you'll find those low IGA prices featured on every item.
Topic 2. Our new segment, You're Dead to Me, where we talk about pieces of pop culture that we hate, so you get an idea if your opinions match along with ours. This week, we're talking to Sonia about one of her favorite pieces of pop culture. He said ironically, Ben Stiller's Meet the Parents. Sonia, why do you hate this movie so much?
I really hate this movie, to quote Roger Ebert. I remember seeing this movie in the theater, and I was on a date. I think it was a second date. There was no third date. Everyone in the theater was laughing really hard at this movie except for me. And I think the reason I hate it so much is no one in it behaves like a real person would behave.
So what's it about again?
Ben Stiller meets his fiance's parents.
Oh, right.
I think the best comedy comes from a real place. And there's nothing real in this movie. At some point, like, Ben Stiller's character lies about milking a cat, which is like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then there's just like, the whole plot depends on a bunch of like really stupid, ridiculous misunderstandings that could be solved with one line of dialogue. And I'm not a fan of those types of movies. And Meet the Parents is that type of movie. And I would think that it's, kind of a nothing movie, except it made a ton of money. It has 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it spawned like 2 more sequels, which makes me just hate it even more. So if you like Meet the Parents, we can still be friends, but I'll question your judgment, and I'll put a little check mark next to your name.
Well, so now, correct me if I'm wrong, the sequel was called Meet the Fockers?
I believe that is correct. And then there was another one called Little Fockers.
That's right. And
Get it?
Get it? See, that is not exactly funny, but there was just a throwaway joke in the first movie about his parents' names were Fockers.
Right.
And
his name is Focker.
That's right.
His name is Greg Focker.
And actually I think that it kind of encapsulates what you're talking about in that.
By the way, I thought that new Spielberg movie was going to be Big Fucking Giant.
That's right.
That's why I didn't see it.
That's a surprising naming choice for Disney, but all right, I guess so. Well, yeah, and if I remember correctly, because of, it is kind of a dirty throwaway joke in Meet the Parents, and the MPAA was not going to let the studio release Meet the Fockers named Meet the Fockers. It's Foaker, I think. Anyway, they were going to say, no, this is obviously the F word. We're not going to let you name a movie that when you say it is having people say a swear word unless you can find an actual family named the Fockers.
I don't remember this at all.
So I can't remember. I think it was Universal. I could be wrong about the studio. They had to go out, and I think somewhere in Nova Scotia, they found a family named the Fockers.
And they had to have someone legally change their name.
Now that you're saying it, it's funny. As I was relating, because I had heard the story years ago, and I thought it was kind of funny. And as I'm telling the story, I'm thinking, you know what I bet they did? They went and found some family.
Yeah, they paid him.
Gave him here's $20,000 for 6 months. You need to change your name to Foaker, and then we'll be good. Wow.
Now that's the movie I want to see.
Actually, that is nice little junior executive from Universal.
Yeah, pays a family $20,000 for 6 months to change their names to something that sounds like a swear word. I would rather see that movie than Meet the Parents.
Wow. All right. If there are any screenwriters listening to the sound of our voices right now,
you're welcome for the free idea.
I don't have the time to write this. Sonia doesn't have the time to write this. Please go write this and make this movie, because that sounds great. Which brings us to segment 3, the Why Should I Listen to You 4th of July edition, where we talk about movies that we love, so you can decide when we tell you if a new movie or a new TV show is any good, if you should listen to us, because we're talking about some of our favorite movies here. And we're going to start out. This one is themed for America.
America!
The greatest country in North America. We're going to talk about movies that we think kind of embody what we love about America on this, her 200th birthday since independence from Great Britain, which I think Scotland here in the next year or two is going to have their first annual independence from Britain. But anyway, let's not get distracted. Sonia,
yeah,
what is your first movie for Why Should We Listen to You 4th of July edition? What's one of your favorite movies about America?
One of my favorites is 1939's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. With Jimmy Stewart. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis for people that maybe haven't seen it because it's quite old. Downright dreamy but naive Jimmy Stewart is appointed to the Senate and is quickly disheartened by a vicious press and corrupt colleagues who frame him of wrongdoing to save themselves. But instead of giving up, super patriotic Jimmy Stewart holds a filibuster, and spoiler alert for a movie that's about 77 years old, eventually reveals the real villains and clears his name. Why I love this movie is I want to believe that there are still Jimmy Stewarts working in our government. We are all so numb to corruption now that it's not even really a deal breaker for us anymore when we go to vote. And some of the recent filibusters we've seen in the Senate and the sit-in that went on about gun control in the House makes me think there's a little bit of Jimmy Stewart in there. And the movie makes me feel better. It's like the system doesn't always work, but it does in this movie. Have you seen this movie?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's funny. This was one of the movies I was thinking about picking because it's... this movie gets talked about a lot of, Jimmy Stewart, he's this naive guy, but in the movie, and he is very naive, and he's got certain parts of the Constitution memorized, and he's got this very idealized view of government, and then he goes in, and the movie itself is really brutal. It is really...
by watching a character you really love just get beat down.
Yeah. And that's the thing is he does come out on top, but it's because he fails. He has the filibuster. He goes through this thing, and Claude Rains, who's one of my favorite actors of all time, is kind of his mentor and like the senior senator from the unnamed state that he's from, that Jimmy Stewart is from, is the actual corrupt politician, and he's the one that crushes Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah,
and
it's really sad.
It's really sad, but the way that Jimmy Stewart eventually prevails is he collapses out cold. He's gone. He's failed. His reputation's been crushed. And then Claude Rains sees this nice, sweet, innocent man destroyed by the power of corruption. And then he just goes nuts.
Yeah.
Which is fun, but... you would think that with the reputation that this movie has, you'd think, oh, it's just, a Frank Capra feel-good movie. And it's not. I mean, it is a feel-good movie, but it's really rough.
Well, I think people need to rethink when they say a Frank Capra feel-good movie, because they need to rewatch It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know how feel-good that movie is.
That's right.
I'm like, you guys rethink that term.
Yeah, I agree. This actually goes back a little bit to our discussion of Spielberg early, is they have these reputations, and in some ways, I guess, they're earned a little bit, but It's a Wonderful Life is a grim movie that turns on a guy's suicide attempt.
I just saw this movie for the first time like 3 years ago, by the way, and I'm a huge Jimmy Stewart fan and love to watch old movies. Somehow had never seen It's a Wonderful Life, watched it, and... was like, this is the movie that everyone thinks is so uplifting. This is the movie that everyone loves to watch around the holidays.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Well, it is until the very end.
Yes.
And in the very... Actually, now that we're talking about this, it's a lot like the turn of E.T., is that it gets a lot grimmer than you would expect a movie like that to get.
Yes.
But then when it turns around and earns the redemption at the end, or earns kind of the happy ending, it really earns it. And it really hits you like... I think I've cried a couple times at the end of It's a Wonderful Life, when he realizes this life that he thought he had failed at. He thought he was just some forgotten nobody that had the world passed him by, and then he realizes this entire town loves him. It's really good. It's really sweet.
Yeah. Well, and I love a lot of Jimmy Stewart movies, let me just say.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorites, and I think if anybody met my husband, they'd be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Sonia has a type. He is very Jimmy Stewart, I think.
Right. Does David write poetry that he reads on the Tonight Show?
No.
No. All right. Wow. It's not
Not
that
that
much
I'm actually.
It's not that much like Jimmy Stewart then.
I don't know everything about him.
Does Dana Carvey do a spot on David impression?
Yes.
All right. Well, then you're one for two.
So, Smith, what is one of your movies?
This one's a curveball, but I think, hear me out, I think I can pull this off. One of mine is Spike Lee's 1992 movie, Malcolm X.
Nice pick.
Which, we what we didn't want to do was just pick, war movies like Saving Private Ryan or whatever. We wanted
Top Gun.
Or yeah, exactly, Top Gun or something, like rah American movies. But
Team America, World Police,
right? But or for me at least, I also didn't want to pick movies that kind of ran down America and just examined its awfulness. Right. I wanted to pick a movie that really communicates what it is to be an American. And if you look at the track of Malcolm X in this movie, played to just one of the all-time great performances by Denzel Washington, and it's insane how he did not get the Oscar for this movie. But anyway,
well, to be fair, Al Pacino was really good that year in Scent of a Woman,
okay,
and we're all still. By the way, we're all still talking about Scent of a Woman, right?
Right,
it's such a good movie.
So, but anyway, and a lot of people give Spike Lee guff, and they say, "Oh, he doesn't like America. Why is he always criticizing this?" The thing that's great about Malcolm X, and back in the 60s, people still say this about, oh, Malcolm X didn't really love America, and he just hates America and hates everything. No. The reason Malcolm X is so powerful is because he buys into America. He buys into the idea of equality, the idea of everybody's created equal, and we can all make our way in this world more than a lot of politicians and more than a lot of, rah-rah America types. He really buys it, and he can defend it. He's incredibly articulate. Watching Malcolm go from this kind of street thug to this unbelievably respectable and tough and hard-ass defender of his people is really inspiring. There's a moment in Malcolm X that kind of reminds me in a weird way, or echoes for me, the feeling I have sometimes when I'm watching Jimmy Stewart give, like when Jimmy Stewart's on the floor of the Senate and Mr. Smith goes to Washington, it's like you really identify with him, you really feel for him, you really look up to him, and it's amazing. And there's a moment where one of Malcolm's acolytes gets beaten up by the cops in Malcolm X. So he gathers a bunch of Nation of Islam guys, and they walk to the hospital, and they're marching out there, and the cops see him coming, and you think, oh my God, there's going to be this huge riot. It's just going to be a train wreck. Look at this. And he stops them. He moves them around. He controls them just with moving his hand and the discipline that he's instilled in them. And it's just this electrifying, great moment. And he stands up to these corrupt cops, and he's very on point. He's very, I don't know, people say about a bunch of bad stuff when you start calling African Americans articulate, but he's like hyper verbal. Almost, actually, you know what it is? It's almost like kind of an Aaron Sorkin moment where he's using words as a weapon to go after corruption, and it's just electrifying to see. And just to see him be such a badass without raising a finger is so... it's amazing. And then, to see the way that he transformed, kind of went a little bit too far with kind of hating white America, and then moderating into this really respectable, really tough, civil rights warrior that then gets cut down is just, the story of America for me is the story of people without freedom, without anything, coming here, taking freedom for themselves, building something out of themselves, and making us all better off in the process. And that's the story of Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Even though I think so. Great.
It's so funny. That movie's even more timely now.
It is.
People should be watching it now and talking about it now. And I'm so interested in what you said about how people criticize Malcolm X because he was saying, bad things about America and therefore he's not patriotic or something. And I think if you really love America, you can criticize it too. And that's what love is. It's not like a blind love.
Yeah.
It's, you can point out its flaws, and we can work on this together. And it kind of ties into what my other pick is.
Yeah. Actually, let me just say one last thing to kind of cap on that is, people think, oh, well, if you love America, you don't criticize it. And which is, that's kind of a dumb patriot's way of looking at things. But I think a real patriot's way of looking at things is not necessarily that you have to criticize it, but Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and a lot of activists throughout history believe in what America's supposed to be. and all of their criticisms, or all of their comments, I would even say, I wouldn't even say their criticisms, all of them come from, this is what we're supposed to be. I believe in these American ideals, and we're not living up to them, and you're denying them to a certain segment of society. And let's be Americans. Let's live up to the, what was laid down in the Declaration of Independence. Let's live up to what's laid down by our founding fathers in the Bill of Rights. And if we live up to these things, this will be a better country for everybody. We just want our freedom too. That's the quote unquote criticism,
right?
Of
why do you hate
guys.
America, Smith?
Because it's about to elect Trump. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. We're all better than that, right, guys? Anyway, all right. So
I believe we are.
Which brings us to your second of our 4 picks.
My other pick, yes, is also a movie that's about kind of criticizing America because we love it. All the President's Men with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. It's maybe the flip side of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Mm-hmm. It's also the movie that probably made every journalist working today want to be a journalist.
That's right. It made me, for a while, want to be a journalist.
Yeah. One of the things I love about the movie so much, and it's not just because it criticizes, it points out like kind of some of the big flaws in our government, but it also shows that we kind of have checks and balances and we can fix those things. But as someone who used to be a journalist, I love how it depicts reporting. Yeah. I love how it can be kind of tedious. Like you're making calls, you're talking to people, you have to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And then pulling it all together to make a story to share with people. And I think Spotlight recently did the same thing. And honestly, I probably could have put Spotlight on this list too.
Yeah.
It's not just about like putting on a fedora with a tag that says press and yelling, what a scoop, and stop the presses. It's about making phone calls, making connections, talking to people, asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of All the President's Men is. And I think it's so well done and how it builds tension with, it's just no like action.
Yeah.
It's phone calls and people talking to each other. Yeah. And it gets really tense. And that's one level that I love it on. And then of course there's the whole other level, which is, it's a crime story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a really good one.
Yeah.
And a true one.
Exactly. And that's the thing is,
and it makes me grateful for one of our country's best values, which is, freedom of the press.
That's right. And that's the thing. And back when I was being a journalist, I used to say one of the things that made me really happy about it is I believe there is one private industry mentioned in the Bill of Rights, and it's the press. And the founding fathers put that in there because they knew that people had a need to be able to go after the government and criticize it and critique it and point out its foibles. And All the President's Men is maybe our greatest example of the press going after corruption in government and bringing down, people that deserve to be brought down. I would say that I think one of the frustrations that we have in modern times is, you don't really have a lot of Woodward and Bernstein types that go out and do tough, long, unforgiving reporting to bring, undeniable facts to the public.
Well, now, and that's what Spotlight was.
Yeah, exactly.
Also showing.
Spotlight was, but I guess I'm talking about Washington and the Washington press corps. It's a lot of now it's tweets and cover. What did this person say against that person, and who has this attack at or something. You don't have real deep. A lot of it is kind of opinion and analysis. You don't have a lot of deep, serious reporting anymore, and I think we're definitely worse off for it right now.
It goes back to what I said earlier, which is we're all just so numb to the corruption now. Like when Watergate happened and Nixon resigned, a huge deal.
Yeah.
A huge deal. And like now we're just like I don't even know if this would register with people.
Yeah.
If they'd be like, he did what? Whatever. Like,
well,
you know, what is Kim Kardashian wearing this week? Like, I don't even know, would people care?
Yeah. Well, here I'm going to be an equal opportunity offender now, because moments earlier I was talking about how petrified I would be if Trump were elected president. But I think there is a little bit of a parallel in what's going on with Hillary and her emails right now, in that the story coming out drip by drip. And there's, you know, I've said this to you before off mic. If you look at Nixon and his taping system and the way he dealt with that, and the way Hillary and her email system and the way she's dealing with that, the parallels are nuts. You know, even down
that's
to
what I'm talking about. Well, we're just like,
exactly.
You know, that's how corrupt everything is now, is that seriously, to me, I was like, that's not even an issue. I don't even care. Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I'm kind of facetious about it, but, you know, there was the 18-minute gap where something was in the tapes that Nixon didn't want out, so he had it recorded over. And, lo and behold, there's all these deleted emails from Hillary. It's just, and what you're saying is, that's exactly right, is there's a similar serious thing going on with Hillary that isn't even being dealt with in anything near the way Watergate was dealt with. You know, some people are talking about it, but a lot of people are tuning it out. And maybe they should. And of course, it's not exactly like Watergate. You know, I don't think Hillary has her campaign aides breaking into psychiatrists' offices or anything the way the Plumbers did.
So.
But, you know, there's a lot of serious. I think journalism has gotten itself to the point in America where so much bad journalism has gotten out there that when the good journalism finally does get kicked out there, people almost tune it out and almost have a hard time dealing with it in an adult way.
Which, by the way, they could also direct some of that energy towards a lot of things about Donald Trump, and nobody's bothering.
Oh, well,
that guy's crooked as get out. And
I think a lot of that stuff is coming out.
I'm just trying. I'm trying to be trying to be bipartisan here.
That's right.
Like,
right.
You know, it's not just her.
Yeah. Oh, no. You're right. You're just. I was thinking the parallels.
But what I'm saying is both of them are probably pretty corrupt.
Yeah.
And we just don't care.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing. Is I was just drawing the similarities between her and Nixon that just happened to pop up. But no, I mean, Trump's a train wreck, and here we are. Happy 4th of July, people. Don't vote for either of them.
I don't agree with that. What is your other pick?
All right,
Smith?
which brings us to my final pick.
Let's take this out on a better note.
Which is the modern day, a movie starring the modern day Jimmy Stewart. And that is Tom Hanks in Apollo 11.
Apollo 13.
Damn it, you're right! Oh! I was so happy. You could hear it in my voice. I was leading up to it, and then I said the wrong name in just this tone of voice. But anyway, so...
Can I tell you a story about when I worked at the movie theater?
In a second.
Somebody literally asked me if they had to see the other Apollo movies. And by the way, they weren't joking.
You should have said yes.
I was like, yeah, you should go to Blockbuster right now and rent it. Because that's how long ago it was.
That's right. Go rent Apollo 1. It's not an upper. In fact, it's quite depressing.
I'm sorry, I interrupted now. Continue.
That's right. Skip over Apollo 2. I think then you just go straight to Apollo 8, if I remember correctly. Anyway, Apollo 13 is the story of America's third mission to land on the moon that went awry when an explosion happened on the spacecraft, and NASA had to get 3 astronauts back as they were hurtling towards the moon, get them back from the moon without dying, even though a lot of their oxygen was gone. And it is just an amazing movie about what a portion of the American government does. We just spent a lot of time kicking around various aspects of the American government. This is NASA using technology, using, the smartest people that they can find to do things for humanity that are going to endure far beyond what, maybe even our country. And watching the team at NASA bring these 3 astronauts back is just very inspiring. A lot of working class scientists and, engineers trying to unravel this nearly impossible technical problem of getting these 3 guys. I think they were up in space for 4 days after the explosion happened. It's directed by Ron Howard. It came out in 95. It was one of the movies in Tom Hanks' amazing run from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s of just every movie he made was spectacular.
This is like peak Tom Hanks being Tom Hanksian.
That's right.
Yeah,
this is... it's amazing. And that's one of the things to kind of step back a little bit. You had, I think... Oliver Stone actually complained about Apollo 13, and he talked about how, the United States just, the whole moon mission was to, scare the Russians, and it was just part of intercontinental ballistic missile program, and it was just to glorify rockets and all this stuff, which, yes, a lot of that is true, but the thing that I love about America, and I love about when we are at our best, this is a very simplistic comparison that I've made before, but, Nazis built these rockets to destroy London. We hired a lot of the same Nazis, brought them over here, and landed on the moon. And when you compare what we do with rocket scientists and what Germany did with rocket scientists, you know what? It makes me feel pretty good about being an American. It makes me feel pretty good. And watching Apollo 13 is, a perfect 2-hour encapsulation of that thought process and that ethos. And I like Oliver Stone.
It's the only movie on our list where you can pump your fist in the air and be like, yeah!
That's right.
America!
That's right.
It's the only one.
That's right. So, but yeah, so with that in mind, we've given you a lot of movies to go see. Sonia definitely wants you to go see Meet the Parents. Remember that.
Definitely don't.
So, for the 4th of July, from all of us here at Dorking Out, have a happy birthday, America. And
happy birthday, America.
We will see you next time.
Are you going to tell me to say goodbye?
No. You're a grown woman. You know what to do.
Goodbye.
Bye.
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Juergens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjuergens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.